I've had many escapades in my life that have been perfectly planned, prepared, and predictable. Let's face it, uneventful adventures are lackluster and have no place in a TED Talk. So today I'm going to be talking about those that are filled with chaos and calamity, beginning with one of my earliest memories in 1982 in our backyard in South Africa, when my father Charlie decided to build a zip line. Yes, a zip line from the wheel of an abandoned shopping cart and other non-standard equipment. So before I go any further, there are a few things you need to know about Charlie. First is, he wasn't a recent graduate of the National Academy of Zipline Makers. Secondly, he didn't even have a set of plans. He was about as qualified to create a zipline as you and I. So there is my mom, steadying herself at the top of this 20-foot ladder, about to take the first experimental run. She's tightening her grip on this handle, cursing my dad just loud enough for us kids to hear, before she reluctantly kicks off, white-knuckling it through the air like some unlikely superhero in a really low-budget Cirque du Soleil production. My brother and I are mesmerized. I mean, seriously, this is awesome. We're fist pumping and high-fiving, our necks craned back and our mouths flipped open like Pez dispensers until she comes to our nerving halt. About a third of the way down, that wheel jams, whipping her body forward like a rubber chicken and dangling 15 feet from the air. Stunned, we turn to my dad, who just moments before must have had an empathy lobotomy because all he can muster is, well, looks like she still has some problems. Ooh, my mom or the zip line? In any event, he's under her, trying to desperately break her fall. So you're probably wondering whether my sweet mother divorced him right away or whether she waited a couple of weeks to consult with an attorney first. And while this isn't the point of the story, I can assure you that their marriage survived this ordeal with just a few minor bumps and bruises. But here's the thing, and the actual point of the story, is that my father hadn't spent months and months researching and planning the zip line. He instinctively knew that the learning was in the doing. Now, I'll admit, that attitude didn't always serve us well as kids. Like the time he made patio furniture from our car seats. No kidding. But for the most part, he succeeded more than he failed. He just kind of experimented his way to success. In contrast, I was more conservative. I'd say I used planning and research as a coping mechanism because I just never felt smart enough just to take the leap. I never felt that I knew enough. And as a consequence, I would wait until I was 150% qualified. And that attitude held me back. It kept me from taking the leap in many, many areas of my life, and that realization came crashing down on me about 6 years ago. I was married to a wonderful man who actually put up with 100% of my nonsense, about 10% of the time. And we were ill-suited for marriage, but instead of acting on that insight, I did what I always do, which is delve into research and planning. Reading not one, but 7 books on the topic, seeing 3 marriage therapists, collectively spending the next 35,000 hours procrastinating, or as I like to call it, research and planning, culminating in my piece de resistance, a divorce binder. Now, most people have a wedding binder to start their marriage. I also had one to end it, complete with colored tabs. Now, at the end of those 35,000 hours, the curious thing is I didn't change my point of view. It simply reinforced what I already knew to be true. So here's the thing. It wasn't a knowledge deficit. It was a doing deficit, a knowing-doing gap. And if there is an upside to crushing events like getting a divorce, is that it forces deep reflection in the aftermath. It compels you to think about your purpose, what mark you want to leave on the world, and more than that, the ideas and the opportunities that you haven't taken the leap on because you simply don't have the courage. Now, the ironic thing is, to my friends and my family, they saw things differently. They saw what was above the waterline, all of these things that occurred because I had taken the leap on them. I have a beautiful daughter. I've got a seemingly impressive array of accolades and travels and jobs. But what that doesn't account for are those things below the waterline, below the line of visibility, this unlived life of should-haves and could-haves. The company I haven't started, the book I haven't finished writing, the canvas that sits unpainted in my basement. It was like I'd been driving through life with the parking brake on, a closet procrastinator, putting off my life's work until I was smarter, had more money, had more connections, had more time, had more energy, anything that would pass for an excuse. And my most sophisticated form of procrastination, you got it, planning and research. But would planning and research really have kept me safe? Would it really have kept me from failure? Well, join me now in Honduras. It's 1998. Hurricane Mitch has ripped through the nation. It's decimated everything in its path, including taking down all of the bridges, with the exception of one, the Choluteca Bridge. And this bridge stands pristine, just as it was planned, built, engineered. But it suffered the ultimate indignity in that the river moved. No amount of planning or research could have inoculated this bridge from changing conditions or kept it from failure. Because truthfully, failure happens, and procrastinating with more research and planning isn't going to stop that. All it's going to do is keep your ideas captive, unable to enrich the world. And this is one of the biggest deficits we face in society today, and honestly, one of the biggest hurdles to innovations. Because think about it, all of us have experienced a good percentage of innovations that someone has decided to take the leap on, even the crazy ones. Airbnb, Uber, heck, even Segway. But we experience 0% of those ideas that are still marinating in someone's mind because they haven't had the courage to take the leap on it. Because taking the leap means making yourself vulnerable. It means putting yourself out there without any security or safeguards. And to our reptilian brain, that part of our minds that wants to keep us safe, it seems better to postpone and use planning and research as a substitute for action. I'm a health care experience designer, which really just means I design the interactions between physicians and health plans and patients. And healthcare is pretty complex. I don't know if you've heard. So instead of trying to grit my teeth and summon up this almost superhuman form of courage to take the leap, a more pragmatic approach is to use what's known as design thinking. And design thinking allows you to take a really ambitious idea and break it into bite-sized pieces, run mini experiments, and test and learn until you've got it right. And here are 3 ways to think about it. First of all, you may start with an ambitious, practically crazy vision. And it's tough to get there in one straight shot. That's scary. What's less scary is to take that idea, unpack it into its component parts, and isolate and tackle those one at a time. So in healthcare, instead of us trying to redesign the entire physician visit, we can take a bite out and just look at the waiting room. Or take another bite out and just look at the paperwork in the waiting room. The idea is that by doing the manageable doing parts of the idea, we move from getting ready to getting started. Secondly, experiments allow us to test things out without fully committing. So you may start with a rough prototype, iterate, and test and learn, and with every success, your confidence grows. And we might, as an example, use the same storyboards they use in the movies to plot out a scene, and we'll map out the interaction between a health plan and a physician and a patient before ever putting it into place. Or perhaps even sketch out the mobile interface before spending a single cent on software development. The idea here is to make these experiments so low cost, so low risk, that it's okay to fail. Just like Thomas Edison. That guy tried 6,000 filaments before he found the right one. The whole idea is to stay in this experimentation state of mind, learning by doing and not learning by planning. And lastly, find your catalyst, whatever that may be. You know, sometimes even when we have rock solid determination and we've got a great idea and we might even know just enough to get started, that's not sufficient to overcome inertia. We need that burst of energy, that trigger point to get us off the starting block. And that may come in the form of a carrot or a stick. I'm reminded of a friend of mine sitting in the audience today who shared with me that she only left her job to start a company of her own once the pain of staying was greater than the pain of leaving. Our most defining moments in life come when we leave our comfort zone to try something new, be it forging a new relationship or activating an idea or starting a company. But too often we get bogged down in overthinking that idea. But by doing these three things, breaking it into bite-sized pieces, running mini experiments, and finding that catalyst, we can get going. Just like Isaac Newton's law of inertia, an object in motion stays in motion. So my dad, Charles, could have kept on talking about thinking, planning that zip line for the rest of his life, and it would have just remained an idea simmering in his mind, but he didn't. He tweaked and tested it, and many three-wheeled shopping carts later, we had our first successful run, delivering my brother safely into the cow pond at the end of the zip line. And it became one of my most cherished childhood memories, and a reminder to me that we are all on the brink of our something great if we're willing to take a leap. And incidentally, car furniture makes for very comfortable patio furniture. Listen, stop getting ready. Get started. Not someday, today.